Imagine you're scrolling through your social media feed when suddenly you see it. A video of someone doing something utterly bizarre. Maybe it's eating a Tide Pod or dancing in the middle of traffic. You roll your eyes thinking, who would be dumb enough to do that? But as the days go by, you see more and more people joining in. Celebrities, politicians, even your friends. Before you know it, you're considering trying it yourself. What just happened? How did an idea go from ridiculous to irresistible? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of crowd psychology, and trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll never look at a viral trend the same way again. Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf, the podcast where we distill the most impactful business books into actionable insights for today's leaders. I'm your host, and today we're exploring a classic that's more relevant now than ever before, The Crowd, a Study of the Popular Mind by Gustave Le Bon. Written in 1895, this groundbreaking work laid the foundation for our understanding of crowd psychology, but don't let its age fool you. In our era of viral trends, social media influencers, and mass movements, Le Bon's insights are as fresh and applicable as ever. Whether you're a seasoned CEO, an up-and-coming entrepreneur, or simply someone fascinated by human behavior, this episode will change the way you think about group dynamics, leadership, and the hidden forces that shape our decisions. So buckle up and get ready to master the mob. Let's dive in. Let's start with a story that might sound familiar. In 2016, a simple mobile game called Pokémon Go was released. Within days, it became a global phenomenon. People of all ages were wandering streets, parks, and even cemeteries, eyes glued to their phones, trying to catch virtual creatures. At its peak, the game had 45 million daily active users. Businesses rushed to become Pokéstops, cities held massive Pokémon hunting events, and there were even reports of car accidents caused by distracted players. Now step back and think about this for a moment. How did a simple game manage to change the behavior of millions of people almost overnight? What made normally rational adults abandon their routines to chase digital monsters? This, my friends, is the power of the crowd in action. Gustave Le Bon would argue that when individuals become part of a crowd, whether it's a physical gathering or a virtual community, something fascinating happens. They become part of what he calls the collective mind. Le Bon writes, "The sentiments and ideas of all the persons in the gathering take one and the same direction, and their conscious personality vanishes. A collective mind is formed, doubtless transitory, but presenting very clearly defined characteristics." In other words, when we become part of a crowd, we start to think and act differently than we would on our own. Our individual intelligence, our critical thinking, even our personal values can be overshadowed by the mentality of the group. This isn't always a bad thing. Crowds can accomplish incredible feats. Think about movements for social change or communities coming together after a disaster. But it can also lead to less desirable outcomes like mob violence or, on a less extreme scale, making questionable decisions like spending hours hunting virtual creatures instead of attending to our real-world responsibilities. Now I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. Think about a time when you've been swept up in crowd behavior. Maybe it was at a sports event, cheering and booing along with thousands of others. Perhaps it was jumping on a social media trend or panic buying toilet paper during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. How did it feel? Did you make decisions or act in ways that, in retrospect, seem out of character? This is the power of the crowd at work. Understanding this concept is crucial for anyone in a leadership position. As Le Bon points out, the leader has most often started as one of follower. He has himself been hypnotized by the idea, whose apostle he has since become. In other words, great leaders don't just direct crowds, they understand them from the inside out. They know what it feels like to be part of that collective mind, and they use that knowledge to guide and influence. So, whether you're leading a small team or a multinational corporation, remember, you're not just dealing with a collection of individuals. You're interacting with a collective mind that has its own unique characteristics and behaviors. In the next section, we'll delve deeper into what those characteristics are and how you can leverage them in your own leadership journey. Now that we understand the concept of the collective mind, let's dive into the specific characteristics that Le Bon identified in crowds. He outlined 3 key traits: anonymity, contagion, and suggestibility. Understanding these can give us powerful insights into human behavior, both in traditional crowds and in our modern, digitally connected world. First, let's talk about anonymity. Le Bon observed that when individuals become part of a crowd, they experience a sense of invincible power. The feeling of personal responsibility disappears, replaced by the anonymity of the group. Think about how this plays out online. Have you ever read the comment section of a controversial news article? The vitriol and extreme opinions expressed there are often shocking. This is anonymity in action. People feel emboldened to say things they'd never utter face to face, protected by the shield of their screens and usernames. But anonymity isn't always negative. It can also foster creativity and honesty. Companies like Google have used anonymous feedback systems to gather candid insights from employees. The key is to understand this dynamic and use it wisely. The second characteristic is contagion. In a crowd, emotions and actions spread like wildfire. Le Bon writes, "The contagion is so powerful that individuals sacrifice their personal interest to the collective interest." We see this in everything from the spread of memes on social media to the adoption of new technologies in industries. Remember the fidget spinner craze of 2017? It went from obscurity to ubiquity in a matter of weeks, with manufacturers struggling to keep up with demand. Then, just as quickly, it faded away. For business leaders, understanding contagion is crucial. It's the driving force behind viral marketing campaigns and the rapid adoption of new products. But it can also lead to mass panic or the spread of misinformation. The challenge is to harness this power responsibly. The third characteristic is suggestibility. When part of a crowd, individuals become highly susceptible to suggestion, often acting in ways that contradict their usual behavior. A stark example of this is the London riots of 2011. What started as a peaceful protest quickly escalated into widespread looting and violence. Many of those arrested were ordinary citizens with no criminal history, swept up in the suggestibility of the crowd. But suggestibility can also be a force for good. Think about charity telethons or crowdfunding campaigns. They leverage the power of suggestion to inspire generosity on a massive scale. For leaders, understanding suggestibility is key to effective communication. It's why great speakers use vivid imagery and emotional appeals. They're not just conveying information, they're planting suggestions that can shape behavior. Now let's bring this into your world. How do these characteristics manifest in your organization? Anonymity might show up in the way your team behaves in large meetings versus one-on-one interactions. Are people more outspoken or reserved in different settings? Contagion could be at play in how quickly new ideas or complaints spread through your company. Is there a grapevine that seems to transmit information faster than official channels? And suggestibility might be evident in how your team responds to different types of leadership. Does an enthusiastic presentation energize your staff while a dry email falls flat? Understanding these dynamics can help you navigate the complex waters of group psychology. But it also raises important ethical considerations. As leaders, we have a responsibility to use this knowledge wisely. Le Bon himself was aware of the potential for manipulation. He wrote, "The multitude is always ready to listen to the strong-willed man who knows how to impose himself upon it." This brings us to our next crucial topic, the role of leaders in crowd psychology. How do certain individuals manage to stand out from the crowd and guide its actions? And what can we learn from them? Let's explore that next. In our exploration of Le Bon's work, we've seen how crowds can take on a life of their own, with individual identities subsumed into a collective mind. But crowds don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped and directed by leaders, individuals who stand apart from the crowd and guide its actions. Le Bon was fascinated by these figures. He wrote, "As soon as a certain number of living beings are gathered together, whether they be animals or men, they place themselves instinctively under the authority of a chief. But what makes someone a leader in the eyes of a crowd? Is it intelligence, charisma, strength?" Le Bon's insights on this topic are both surprising and profoundly relevant to modern leadership. First and foremost, Le Bon emphasized the power of conviction. He observed that crowds are moved not by reason, but by emotion and imagination. A leader who can tap into these elements, who believes fervently in their cause, can sway multitudes. Think about some of the most influential leaders in history, figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., or Steve Jobs. What they all had in common was an unshakable belief in their vision. This conviction was contagious, inspiring others to believe and act alongside them. Le Bon writes, "The intensity of their faith gives great power of suggestion to their words." In other words, it's not just what leaders say, but the passion with which they say it that moves crowds. This insight is crucial for modern business leaders. In a world where employees are increasingly seeking purpose in their work, the ability to articulate and embody a compelling vision is more important than ever. Consider the case of Patagonia's founder, Yvon Chouinard. His unwavering commitment to environmental sustainability has not only shaped his company's policies, but has inspired a devoted customer base and influenced the broader business world. That's the power of conviction in action, but conviction alone isn't enough. Le Bon also highlighted the importance of repetition and affirmation. He noted that crowds are impressed by energetic affirmation, which is unburdened with proof. Now, I'm not suggesting that we abandon facts and evidence in our leadership, but there's an important lesson here about the power of clear, consistent messaging. Think about successful advertising campaigns or political slogans. They don't rely on complex arguments. Instead, they hammer home simple, memorable messages. In your own leadership, are you communicating your key ideas with enough clarity and repetition? Or are you assuming that saying something once is enough? Another fascinating aspect of Le Bon's analysis is his observation about the types of individuals who often become crowd leaders. Contrary to what we might expect, he found that it wasn't always the most intelligent or knowledgeable individuals who rose to the top. Instead, he noted that effective crowd leaders often possessed what he called unconscious genius, an intuitive understanding of the crowd's desires and how to appeal to them. This might remind you of modern concepts like emotional intelligence or the idea of reading the room. Le Bon writes, "The multitude is always ready to listen to the strong-willed man who knows how to impose himself upon it." This strong will isn't about being aggressive or domineering. It's about projecting confidence and certainty, qualities that crowds find reassuring in uncertain times. Think about how this plays out in the business world. Often, it's not the smartest person in the room who becomes CEO, but the one who can inspire confidence, articulate a vision, and rally others around it. Take Richard Branson, for example. While certainly intelligent, his greatest strength has always been his ability to embody the adventurous, rule-breaking spirit of the Virgin brand. He knows how to capture the imagination of both his employees and the public, a classic example of Le Bon's crowd leader. Now, it's important to note that Le Bon's work has been criticized for potentially justifying manipulative or authoritarian leadership, and indeed history provides plenty of examples of charismatic leaders who have led crowds down destructive paths. As modern leaders, our challenge is to take these insights and use them ethically and responsibly. The goal should be to inspire and guide, not to manipulate or control. So how can you apply these principles in your own leadership? Start by examining your own convictions. What do you believe in so strongly that your passion is contagious? How can you communicate that vision more effectively? Consider how you're coming across to your team or your customers. Are you projecting the confidence and certainty that crowds find appealing? If not, how can you develop these qualities authentically? And finally, think about how you can tap into the desires and emotions of your crowd, whether that's your employees, your customers, or the wider public. What do they yearn for? How can your vision align with their aspirations? By understanding the psychology of crowds and the role of leaders within them, you can become a more effective, inspiring, and ethical leader. In our next section, we'll explore how to apply these insights specifically to the business world. Stay tuned. We've delved into the characteristics of crowds and the qualities of those who lead them. Now let's bring these insights into the practical realm of business. How can understanding crowd psychology improve our strategies, our products, and our leadership? Let's start with marketing and advertising. Le Bon's insights into the power of imagery and emotion over reason are particularly relevant here. He wrote, "Crowds think in images, and the image itself immediately calls up a series of other images having no logical connection with the first." This explains why some of the most successful advertising campaigns don't focus on product features or rational arguments, but on evoking emotions and creating memorable images. Think about Nike's Just Do It campaign. It doesn't tell you about the quality of their shoes or the technology in their sportswear. Instead, it taps into the emotions of determination and achievement. It creates an image of the person you could be: active, successful, unstoppable. Or consider Apple's famous 1984 commercial, which introduced the Macintosh computer. It didn't list specs or features. Instead, it presented a powerful image of Apple as a rebel against conformity. This approach turned customers into a crowd united by a shared identity and values. The lesson here: don't just sell a product, create an image, evoke an emotion, give people something to believe in and belong to. Next, let's look at product launches and adoption. Le Bon's concept of contagion is crucial here. Remember, in a crowd, ideas and behaviors spread rapidly from person to person. This is why influencer marketing has become so powerful. When a respected figure adopts a product, it can quickly spread through their crowd of followers. Tesla has masterfully leveraged this principle. By first targeting influential early adopters, they created a buzz that spread through the crowd, turning electric cars from a niche interest into a status symbol. But contagion isn't just about external marketing. It applies within organizations too. If you want a new initiative to take off, start by convincing key influencers within your company. Their adoption will spread to others far more effectively than top-down mandates. Now let's talk about corporate culture. Le Bon's work reminds us that humans are inherently tribal. We naturally form crowds and adopt shared behaviors and beliefs. Smart leaders use this to their advantage. They don't just set rules and policies, they create a corporate crowd with its own identity, complete with shared symbols, rituals, and stories. Zappos is a great example of this. Their famous culture isn't just about perks or policies, it's a shared identity, complete with its own language, traditions, and heroes. Employees aren't just working a job, they're part of a crowd, a tribe. This approach can be incredibly powerful, but it also comes with responsibilities. Remember, crowds can bring out both the best and worst in people. As a leader, you need to guide your corporate crowd towards positive behaviors and values. Le Bon's insights are also valuable in crisis management and public relations. He noted that crowds are often impulsive and extreme in their judgments. A minor issue can quickly escalate into a major crisis if not handled correctly. The key is to understand the emotional dynamics at play. In a crisis, people aren't looking for complex explanations. They want reassurance and clear direction. Johnson & Johnson's handling of the Tylenol crisis in 1982 is a classic example of this done right. They didn't get bogged down in details or defensive posturing. Instead, they took clear, decisive action and communicated it simply and effectively. They understood the psychology of the crowd and were able to regain trust quickly. Now I want to emphasize something crucial. Understanding crowd psychology gives us powerful tools, but with that comes great responsibility. Le Bon's work has sometimes been used to justify manipulation and propaganda. That's not what we're advocating here. As business leaders, our goal should be to use these insights ethically to create value, build genuine connections, and make a positive impact. It's about understanding human nature so we can serve people better, not so we can exploit them. So let's talk about some actionable steps you can take to apply these insights in your business. 1. Audit your marketing. Are you appealing to reason or emotion? Are you creating powerful images that resonate with your audience? 2. Rethink your product launches. Who are the influencers in your target market? How can you leverage the principle of contagion to spread adoption? 3. Examine your corporate culture. Are you creating a shared identity that people want to be part of? What are your tribe's symbols, stories, and rituals? 4. Review your crisis management plans. Are they based on providing clear, reassuring leadership that understands crowd dynamics? 5. Reflect on your leadership style. Are you communicating with the passion and conviction that Le Bon identified as crucial for crowd leaders? Remember, the goal isn't to manipulate, but to connect, inspire, and lead more effectively by understanding the psychological dynamics at play. As we wrap up this section, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. How might your business change if you started thinking of your customers not just as individuals, but as a crowd with its own psychology and dynamics? We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the fascinating world of crowd psychology through the lens of Gustave Le Bon's seminal work, The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. Let's recap the key takeaways. 1. When individuals become part of a crowd, they often think and act differently than they would on their own, forming what Le Bon called a collective mind. 2. Crowds are characterized by anonymity, contagion, and suggestibility, traits that manifest in both physical gatherings and virtual communities. 3. Leaders of crowds are often those who can tap into emotions and imagination, projecting conviction and confidence rather than relying solely on reason or expertise. 4. In business, understanding crowd psychology can enhance our approach to marketing, product adoption, corporate culture, and crisis management. 5. While powerful, these insights must be used ethically and responsibly, aiming to inspire and serve rather than manipulate. The relevance of Le Bon's work in today's digital age is striking. From viral social media trends to the spread of fake news, from brand communities to online mob mentality, we're constantly seeing the principles of crowd psychology at work. As leaders, entrepreneurs, or simply as individuals navigating this complex world, understanding these dynamics is crucial. It allows us to be more discerning consumers of information, more effective communicators, and more impactful leaders. I encourage you to reflect on your role both as a participant in and a leader of crowds. How can you use these insights to make better decisions, to resist harmful crowd influences, and to lead more effectively? Remember, crowds are neither inherently good nor bad. They can drive positive change or lead to destructive outcomes. The key is understanding the forces at play and channeling them responsibly. Gustave Le Bon's The Crowd offers a wealth of insights beyond what we've covered today. If you're intrigued and want to dive deeper, you'll find a link to purchase the full book or audiobook in this episode's description. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of crowd psychology. I hope you've found it as fascinating and applicable as I have. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep leading. This is CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf, signing off.